You ever notice how he always seems to come back right when you're finally okay again? When you've cried the tears, picked yourself up, and started smiling for real, suddenly there's that message. Hey, I've been thinking about you. It feels like fate, doesn't it? Like maybe he's finally realized what he lost. But what if I told you it's not fate? It's timing, strategic, psychological, emotional. Because something shifts the moment you do. When you stop waiting, when your heart no longer beats for his approval, when your energy is no longer tied to him, he feels that, and it scares him. Suddenly, the version of you that needed him is gone. And now, he's the one feeling the loss. Is it love or is it ego? Is he back because he misses you or because he misses the control he once had? This isn't a romantic twist. It's a test. One that shows up just when you've grown too strong to fall for the same story. This time, the choice isn't about whether he's changed, it's about whether you have. So let's talk about what his return really means and how to protect everything you've built while he was gone. You know, there's this strange thing that happens when you finally start to feel like you're moving on. You wake up one morning, and for the first time in weeks, or maybe even months, you don't immediately think about him. You go about your day with a little more ease. You smile without forcing it. You laugh at something and catch yourself thinking, wow, I actually enjoyed that moment. That heavy ache in your chest, it's starting to loosen its grip. And just when you feel like you're turning a corner, he shows up, a message, a call, a DM, something vague like, hey, I was just thinking about you. Or something casual like, how have you been? And suddenly your stomach flips. Not because you're still stuck on him, but because you know exactly what this is. It's like he has a radar for the exact moment your heart is no longer orbiting around him. Now, here's the part that messes with your head. How does he know? You haven't spoken. You haven't posted anything obviously pointed. You didn't send him some dramatic message declaring you've moved on. And yet, somehow, he pops back in. Like clockwork. Let me tell you what's really going on. When you were emotionally attached, he could feel it. Even if you never said a word, there's this unspoken energy that people pick up on. It's the energy of waiting, of hoping, of wondering if they'll reach out. That energy lives in our actions. It shows up in the way we engage online, the subtle checking of our phones, the indirect posts meant for him to see. It lives in the pauses when someone brings up his name, in the stories you tell mutual friends, in the way you still respond to his silence. But the moment you stop doing that, truly stop, it shifts something. There's a release that happens where you're no longer trying to control the narrative or win him back or prove something. You let go of needing closure. You stop checking who viewed your stories. You stop trying to be seen. And without realizing it, you start reclaiming your power. And that's when he feels it. Not consciously, of course. He's not sitting around thinking, oh, she's energetically detached from me now. But he does notice something's different. He feels your absence. Not just physically, but emotionally. That warmth, that pull, that part of you that used to be emotionally available to him, it's no longer there. And that sudden emptiness creates a tension he can't quite explain. It's like you used to be this constant hum in the background of his life, something he could always return to, even if he never really appreciated it. But now the hum is gone. The channel's gone silent. And silence, for people who are used to having your attention, is deafening. This is why men so often come back just when you're healing, because when you stop needing him, he feels it. When you stop trying to get his attention, he wonders where it went. When you stop holding space for him in your heart, He feels the cold that used to be warmth. And suddenly, he's curious again, interested again, even regret. But it's not always about love. Sometimes it's just ego. Sometimes it's insecurity. Sometimes it's boredom or the discomfort of watching you detach from something that once centered around him. And this is where you need to be incredibly careful, because what feels like a romantic reconnection could actually be him responding to your shift in power. Here's what you need to remember in that moment. His message, his reappearance, it's not a sign of fate. It's not proof that you two were meant to be. It's not even necessarily sincere. It's a reaction to a loss of control. It's a reaction to your peace. And your peace, your healing, your growth, that's not something you give up easily. So when he shows up again, don't rush to respond. Don't mistake the timing as destiny. Take a beat. Ask yourself, do I want this person back, or do I just miss the feeling of being wanted? Do I want to open this door, or do I just want validation that I was worth missing? You'll know the difference. And when you do, you'll realize something even more powerful. His return isn't the miracle. You moving on was. You know, there's this strange thing we all do. We want what we can't have, or more accurately, what feels just out of reach. And it's not because we're childish or emotionally immature. It's human nature. The psychology behind it is really quite simple. When something is always available to us, we stop valuing it. But when it starts to slip through our fingers, or when it feels like we could lose it entirely, we suddenly wake up. We pay attention. We get curious. Now, this is exactly what happens when you start to move on from someone. When you emotionally detach, truly let go, and your focus shifts back to yourself, something interesting happens. You stop showing up in his world the same way. You're no longer reacting to his silence, no longer watching his stories, no longer orbiting around his life like a satellite waiting for a signal. And whether he realizes it consciously or not, he picks up on the change. In the past, he may have felt like you were always emotionally available. He didn't have to put in much effort. He could come and go. Maybe he even took it for granted because you were always there in some form, emotionally open, maybe waiting, maybe hoping. But when that energy is gone, when you stop chasing, when you stop caring about the what-ifs, it disrupts the pattern. Suddenly, the part of his brain that was comfortable with your presence begins to register your absence. Not necessarily your physical absence. He may not have seen you in weeks or months, but the emotional absence. That's what triggers the reaction. Not necessarily love, not necessarily a decision that he wants something serious, but a powerful combination of curiosity, fear, and ego. He starts asking himself questions he never had to ask before. Where did she go? Is she seeing someone else? Why doesn't she care anymore? The truth is, he might not have thought much about your worth while he had you. He might not have understood your value when your love was freely given. But once you start to pull back, once you stop performing emotional labor in the relationship, it highlights what he lost. Not because you were never enough, but because, until now, he never had to earn it. This is the moment people often confuse with something deeper. They think, well, he's coming back. He must miss me. He must have realized I'm the one. But that's not always the case. Sometimes it's not that he misses you. It's that he misses the version of you who used to make him feel important. He misses being desired. He misses the comfort of knowing someone was always emotionally there for him. That's very different from wanting to step up and be the partner you deserve. We have to stop assuming that just because someone returns, it means they've grown. Sometimes they're just responding to their own discomfort, not your actual value. They're responding to absence, not insight. That's a crucial distinction, because the part of you that still hopes for reconciliation, the part that dreams of him waking up and finally choosing you, will want to believe it's about love, but you have to be honest with yourself. If someone only shows up when you've detached, that's not love. That's response. That's reaction. That's ego. Let's not confuse momentary attention with long-term intention. Just because someone misses you doesn't mean they're ready for you. And just because you're starting to feel free doesn't mean it's time to turn back. Think about this. The version of you that attracted his renewed interest is not the same version of you that was waiting around. It's the version who let go, who stopped chasing, who started focusing on herself again. That's the version he found magnetic, not because of any game, but because of your shift in energy, because of your peace, because of your self-respect. So don't lose that now. Don't trade your peace for momentary confusion. Don't sabotage the progress you've made just because someone is knocking on the door again. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is keep walking. Not because you're bitter, not because you don't care, but because you finally understand your worth and you're not going to settle for being wanted only when you're gone. Let him want you. Let him wonder. Let him feel the absence. But don't let that be the reason you turn around. You know, it's so tempting to mistake someone's return for a romantic gesture. We see that message pop up on our screen or suddenly hear from someone we thought was long gone, and our heart skips a beat. We start to wonder, has he finally realized what he lost? Has he come to his senses? And while I wish I could say that's always true, the reality is often it's not that simple. Sometimes, actually a lot of the time, he's not coming back because he's had a huge epiphany about love, or because he suddenly sees you as the one. What's actually happening is more human and far less flattering. He's coming back because there's a void, and you used to fill it. There's something incredibly comforting about being wanted, not just desired, but emotionally held. Maybe you were that person for him. You were steady. You were there. You answered the late night texts. You gave him attention even when he didn't always deserve it. Maybe you saw the best in him when even he couldn't. And now that you're gone, there's this space, this emotional emptiness that used to be filled by your presence, your validation, your emotional labor. But here's the kicker. That doesn't mean he's ready to give you what you need. It just means he misses the feeling he got from being around you. He misses the role you played in his life. And let's be honest, it's easy to romanticize someone once they're gone, especially when life starts to feel quiet or uninspiring. When the world slows down or a few flings fall flat, suddenly you become the person he remembers most vividly. Not because he's finally matured or figured out how to meet your standards, but because you represented a kind of comfort, a soft place to land. That doesn't mean he's had a radical transformation. In fact, most of the time, he's still the same person who couldn't commit, who took you for granted, who ghosted, or who left things open-ended. What's changed is you. You've started moving on. You've begun to emotionally detach. You're focusing on yourself, growing, healing, and your absence highlights what he lost, but not necessarily in a deep or meaningful way. He's not necessarily seeing you more clearly now. He's feeling the weight of your absence. And that weight can be uncomfortable, not just because he misses you, but because it disrupts the rhythm of his life. You were a regular fixture, a reliable source of warmth, of ego boosting, of being seen. Now he's left with silence, and silence forces people to confront themselves. So he reaches out, and maybe the message sounds casual. Hey, just thinking about you. Or maybe it's more direct. I miss you. Maybe he wants to grab coffee or talk or catch up. And in that moment, your heart might leap. That old hope rises. Maybe this time it's different. But you have to ask yourself, what's actually different? Not what you want to be different, but what has truly changed in him. Has he taken responsibility for the way things ended? Has he communicated a new understanding of your value? Not just that he misses you, but that he now sees you more fully. Has he done the work, or is he just feeling lonely? Because missing someone is not the same as being ready to love them properly. Missing someone is about you. Loving someone properly is about them. It's about showing up with intention, consistency, and clarity. It's about giving, not just receiving. And here's something crucial. People don't always return because of love. Sometimes they return out of discomfort, that itch of uncertainty, the fear of losing control, the jealousy when they see you happy without them. Those things can all masquerade as longing, but when you scratch the surface, there's nothing solid underneath. This is why it's so important to take your time. Don't rush to assign meaning to a message or a call or a knock on your emotional door. Give yourself space to see things clearly, not through the lens of nostalgia or loneliness, but through truth. Does this person truly see your worth now, or do they just miss the version of themselves they were when you were around? The truth is, someone reaching out again doesn't automatically mean they've changed. It often just means they're uncomfortable with your absence. But that's not your responsibility to soothe. You are not a void filler. You're not a backup plan. You're not someone's emotional crutch. You're a whole person, not a second chance for someone who couldn't recognize your value the first time. You know, one of the most overlooked but incredibly powerful reasons a man suddenly shows up again, right when you're finally starting to feel free of him, is ego. Not love, not regret, not some spiritual epiphany about how much he misses you, just ego. Let's talk about what that really looks like, because it's sneaky. It's not always loud or obvious. It doesn't always come with grand gestures or emotional apologies. Sometimes it shows up as a casual, "Hey stranger" text, a like on your story, a comment on a post, something that feels small but is calculated. Because what he's really trying to do is check, am I still in there? Do I still have access? See, here's what happens. When he walked away, when he went quiet or ghosted or distanced himself, in his mind he probably thought you'd wait. Maybe not consciously, but deep down, he assumed he could always come back if he wanted to. So because you were there, emotionally available, maybe still hoping, maybe still checking your phone, still wondering what you did wrong, but then something changed. You did the work. You stopped waiting. You went quiet, not to play games, but because your peace became more important than the noise. And slowly, you started letting go. Not just externally, but internally. The narrative in your head started to shift from, what can I do to get him back, to, do I even want this version of him anymore? That shift, he feels it. Even if he doesn't know why. Even if you're not posting a single thing on social media. Even if you're not dating anyone new. There's something in the air that tells him he's no longer in control of your emotional state. And that is the part he wasn't ready for. So what does he do? He tries to claw back that power. Because let's be real, when someone has had emotional access to you and suddenly it's gone, it creates discomfort. And most people don't like discomfort. They don't like feeling replaced. They don't like realizing they're no longer the center of your emotional world, especially if they never truly expected you to let go. It's not that he suddenly realized and this isn't about demonizing him, it's about understanding how attraction and ego and connection work. Because the biggest mistake people make in this moment, when he finally shows back up, is thinking it means more than it does. That one message sends your mind racing. Does this mean he's changed? Did he finally realize what he lost? Maybe he just needed space to figure things out. And maybe he did. But most of the time, if we're honest, that first message isn't about growth. It's about reaction. He saw something. He felt something, and it bothered him. He's not reaching out because he's done a year of therapy and realized how deeply he mishandled the situation. He's reaching out because he saw you smiling, thriving, or even just unbothered. And that was enough to spark the question, am I still welcome here? And that's where you need to be really honest with yourself. Because his ego might be loud right now. But what matters more is your clarity. Just because he wants back in doesn't mean he deserves back in. Just because he misses the old dynamic doesn't mean you should recreate it. You have to ask yourself, if he hadn't reached out, would I have reached out to him? If the answer's no, not out of pride, but out of growth, then you're not missing anything. You're just being tested. And that's what this moment is, a test. Are you going to let his need for validation interrupt your healing? Are you going to let his fear of being forgotten pull you back into something you've outgrown? Or are you going to stay rooted in the peace you've built without him? Because it's tempting, of course it is. We're all human. That little ping of attention can feel like relief. He's thinking about me. But attention isn't the same as intention, and validation isn't the same as value. If he's only showing up because he noticed you're no longer waiting, then he's not chasing love. He's chasing control. And if he didn't appreciate you when he had you, but now suddenly can't stand the idea of you being happy without him, that's not romance. That's insecurity. So don't be flattered by the message. Be focused on your mission. Don't let nostalgia talk you into repeating cycles that almost destroyed your self-worth. Because the truth is, the moment he realized you were moving on, he started to remember your value. But you never should have forgotten it to begin with. And now that you finally remember, don't hand it back over to someone who only noticed your worth when it was no longer theirs to take for granted. You know, it's funny how life works. Just when you're finally feeling free, when the weight starts to lift, when you catch yourself smiling without forcing it, when the silence that used to hurt now feels peaceful, that's often the exact moment he shows up again. It's almost like clockwork. And I want you to understand something really important here. His return is not some divine sign. It's a test of who you've become, a test of everything you've worked through, a test of whether the healing you've done is strong enough to hold up against the temptation of old patterns. Because here's the truth. People don't always come back because they've changed. Sometimes they come back because you have. And now that you're no longer chasing, begging, or waiting, now that you've stopped orbiting around their needs and approval, they feel the absence, but it's not always a realization of love. Often, it's discomfort. Discomfort with not being the center of your world anymore. Discomfort with the idea that someone else might get the version of you they took for granted. You see, your silence wasn't just quiet, it was clarity. And it's in that clarity that you found your power again. That space where you started putting yourself first, not from bitterness, but from a place of deep respect for your own worth. And now, just as you're stepping into that energy, here he comes. With a text, a DM, a hey, just thinking about you. Convenient, right? And I get it. That message can mess with your head because there's still a part of you that wanted it. Not necessarily because you want him back, but because It validates the pain you went through. It tells you it wasn't all in your head, that maybe he did care, that maybe you weren't crazy for holding on as long as you did. But I want you to breathe for a second and really ask yourself, why is he back? And more importantly, why now? Is it because he truly sees you differently? Has he grown, reflected, and done the work to show up in the way you needed all along? Or is it just that now you're no longer accessible? That now the game has changed and suddenly he's playing catch up? Because that's the thing about some people. They don't realize what they had until it's no longer theirs to claim. And the moment they sense they've lost access, they try to reopen the door. Not always because they're ready to walk through it properly, but just to see if it still opens. You have to remember this. Someone returning does not erase the version of themselves that left. It doesn't undo the inconsistency, the mixed signals, the confusion you had to untangle just to sleep at night. It doesn't suddenly fill the emotional gaps you had to fill on your own. It doesn't give back the energy you lost wondering whether you mattered. And if you take them back without real change, if you let their presence interrupt your progress, you run the risk of betraying the very strength that got you this far. You didn't fight your way through the heartbreak, the overthinking, the self-doubt, just to land back where you started. You didn't learn how to stand on your own again just to lean on someone who couldn't hold you the first time. You see, this moment, it's not about him, it's about you. It's about recognizing that love isn't proven by someone's return. It's proven by the consistency of someone's presence, by how they show up, not when it's convenient or when they feel your absence, but when it's hard, when it requires effort, when it demands growth. So if he's back now, let that be information, not temptation. Observe, don't react. You can listen without losing yourself. You can care without reopening a chapter that almost broke you. And most importantly, you can walk away again, this time with more certainty, more peace, more self-respect than ever before. Because healing doesn't mean you never loved them. It means you finally loved yourself enough not to settle for the same story twice. Don't let a ghost from the past interrupt the future you've worked so hard to build. You know what's interesting? People often ask me, why do they always come back when I'm finally moving on? And the truth is, moving on isn't just something you do externally. It's not just cutting off contact or deleting photos. Those are surface level actions. Real moving on happens deep inside. It's when your heart finally stops hoping for a different version of the same person. It's when your energy is no longer tied to what they're doing, who they're with, or whether they're thinking about you. And here's the irony. That's when they feel it. That's when they show up. Just when you've rebuilt your peace, just when your feet have finally stopped turning back to look, they reappear. They sense the shift in you, even if they can't name it. There's something unspoken about someone who's let go, a person who has reconnected with themselves, realigned with their worth, and started living again. That kind of energy, it's powerful and it's attractive. But this is the part where you have to be most careful, because the danger isn't in them showing up again, it's in what you do when they do. This moment becomes a crossroads. You can either let their return flatter you into slipping back into old patterns, or you can see it for what it is, a reflection of your growth and the magnetic energy that healing creates. Think about it. For so long, your focus might have been on trying to fix the relationship, or trying to understand what went wrong, or how you could have done things differently. And when you finally stopped doing that, when you started focusing on you again, your peace, your joy, your purpose, You became someone different. You became someone who no longer needs their validation to feel whole. And when you become that version of yourself, they notice, maybe not consciously, but they feel the loss of control. They feel that their presence doesn't have the same weight it used to, that they no longer have easy access to you. That's why they reach out. That's why the text comes in. And it's wrapped in nostalgia, in softness, in just enough vulnerability to make you question yourself. Maybe he's changed. Maybe he really means it this time. Maybe we could try again. But here's the truth. He might have changed. He might mean it. But you're not responsible for that possibility. You're responsible for protecting the person you've become in his absence. The one who has built boundaries. The one who has learnt not to mistake attention for affection. The one who no longer confuses someone returning with someone deserving a place in your life again. Because moving on doesn't mean you're closed off to love. It means you've stopped auditioning for it. It means you've remembered that your life is already whole, already rich, already meaningful, without someone who couldn't value you the first time. And when someone walks away, or worse, takes you for granted, and then returns when they see you shining again, it says more about their fear of losing control than it does about their love for you. This is where your strength gets tested. Not when you're hurting, but when you're healing. When everything in you wants to believe the fairy tale again. But instead of falling back into old rhythms, you ask the question, is this good for the person I am now? Or is this just familiar to the person I used to be? Because familiarity is not love, and comfort is not commitment. Just because he feels safe doesn't mean he makes you feel safe. And just because he misses you doesn't mean he knows how to treat you right. So when he shows up again, your job isn't to panic or to hope or to analyze his every word. Your job is to stay grounded, to stay clear, to stay loyal to the life you've been building in his absence. That life is precious. That peace you fought for, that calmness in your mind, that joy in your routines, that confidence in your steps, that is sacred. Don't throw it away just because someone finally realized your value after you stopped handing it to them on a silver platter. You've become magnetic, not because you played games, but because you stopped chasing. You started choosing you. That kind of energy pulls people in, but it's not meant for everyone. It's meant to attract the right kind of love, not the one that only shows up when you're gone, but the one that never makes you question if they'll stay. So if he's back, let him talk. Let him explain. Let him show, not just say, but don't put your life on pause. Don't shrink the new version of yourself to make room for someone who couldn't handle your light before. You didn't grow this far just to dim again. You didn't fight this hard to feel whole, just to be broken by the same hands twice.